Welcome to the What's Happening Birmingham video podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Jefferson County and What's Happening Birmingham. Today, I have the honor and pleasure. I am so happy to finally get this person on the podcast. I call her one of the most famous news writers, reporters here in Birmingham. I would say Alabama. Carol Robinson. Good afternoon. How you doing today?
I'm good, Jarvis. How are you?
Great. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Great. As you all know, in Birmingham, this is one busy lady. It's nonstop, especially the type of subjects that you cover and you report on in Birmingham, especially with crime and public safety.
Right.
For Alabama Media Group. So before we start, can you give kind of like a quick bio of yourself, introduction?
Sure. I went to Auburn, graduated from Auburn with a degree in public relations. Wasn't sure what I was going to do after college. Interviewed with PR firms, TV stations, newspapers. Birmingham News came up and I took it, and here I am more than 35 years later. And so I have covered a little bit of everything. I started off covering Macon County, Lee County, a bunch of counties down in Southeast Alabama. Came here, I did features for a while, like how to talk to people in an elevator or how to get on along with your in-laws at holiday dinners. Wanted to get back into a little harder news. And so my first, quote, news assignment in the Birmingham area was covering Fairfield, Midfield, and Hueytown. Okay. And that was, late 80s, probably around 88, 89. And crime was part of that and kind of got hooked from there. And the rest is history.
Okay, so take me inside like your typical day, like covering some of these stories.
Right. My typical day can sometimes be 24 hours a day. Mm-hmm. But on a normal day, get up. First thing I do before I even get out of bed is check Facebook, check Twitter, check email. Mm-hmm. See if anything happened overnight while I was asleep. Sometimes I get awakened and sometimes I don't if there's big news during the night. So I check that and get up and get ready for the day, turn on my scan. We have a morning meeting about 9:30. Mm-hmm. That's a Zoom meeting because since March 13th, 2020, we have been working at home since then. Basically just start doing checks. The coroner sends out a daily email, check with police, turn on my scanner, look at court records, excuse me. I told you I have a rotten cold.
Well, it's typical these days because we know we're dealing with this season.
It's crazy. So I just start looking court records, jail records, anything I can find to write about.
Okay, so
it's no typical day.
Yeah, because I guess some people may be thinking because you report on a lot of crime and of course a lot of killings that you actually there at the crime scene.
Yes, if I know about it, I'm there.
Okay.
No matter what time of the day, if there's a shooting or a killing or a bad wreck, any kind of breaking news, my preference is to be there.
Okay. And I'm glad you mentioned about social media, and we're going to probably dive into a lot of this, really I'm going to say majority of our interview, is that how has social media changed when it's covering crime and safety and law enforcement?
Wow, it has changed so much. Back in the old days, we didn't even have cell phones or GPS. So we had a police radio and would get an address, and I'd literally have to look up on a map how to get there. The police radios back in those days were better than they are now. We heard a lot more than we do now. But with social media, there are ways for people to let us know something's happening. As you know, people are always doing Facebook Lives from crime scenes or breaking news scenes.
Mhm.
So we get the information a lot quicker. I am so sorry about this.
You're fine. I want to do a special shout out to Jonathan Groom with WTAT. That group.
He's awesome, isn't he?
Say what?
He's awesome.
Yeah. If you all are not part of that Facebook group, that is the Facebook group. If you want to know about anything going on, I know I'm what's happening in Birmingham, but that group right there, especially when it's coming to, because you post a lot of stories in that group about a lot of the articles you write about.
Right. Because people in that group want to know what's going on.
Mm-hmm. And everything. So, okay.
So it's a blessing and a curse.
Okay.
Because a lot of times people will post stuff that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
And so if people see yellow tape up, they automatically assume somebody's dead, which is rarely the case. Jarvis, I'm so sorry. So I spend a lot of time tracking down things that aren't true as well.
Oh, they got to tackle misinformation, which is great.
Right.
Okay. So when COVID-19 hit, how did that change, when it came to like your job? How did you kind of like adjust and pivot during that time?
Well, for me, crime didn't stop.
Okay.
I stopped working in the office, but I did not ever stop going out to crime scenes or scenes in general. So in that regard, nothing changed.
So even with the crime, like you mentioned that, did you notice a lot more, I know we ain't got the statistics in front of us. Was there a lot more domestic crimes that occurred?
Well, they say that there was. They say that, because people were cooped up in the house.
Mm-hmm.
Keep in mind, we don't cover every single crime.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's a domestic call at a house and there's not shots fired or anybody killed, we aren't necessarily going to know about it. So it's hard for me to gauge that. I can only take, the word of experts that said, domestics did go up.
So what's sometimes some of the biggest challenges with your job? Like I know you say you deal with misinformation. Is it kind of like, and I'm going to give you this comment. Some people feel like you piece together the case quicker than sometimes law enforcement is. With kind of realizing,
Well, sometimes people will talk to reporters before they'll talk to the police.
Okay.
I would never say I pieced it together quicker than law enforcement. I just may release it quicker than law enforcement.
Okay.
They're pretty tight-lipped.
Okay. What are some I like to say this, and that's a great segue. What are some when it comes to your business, the covering like crime and law enforcement, what are some untold or told rules of the road, with kind of covering these stories?
Well, gosh, it's hard to pinpoint. You always want to try to get both sides of the story. People think that we don't, but we do try. Mm-hmm. One thing, that the mainstream media, we'll never show bodies. That's a rule. If we can help it, even a body with the yellow tarp over it, we try to show that. And that's the big difference between us and social media and Facebook reporters.
Facebook. Now, one thing I've noticed that you all have stopped doing as well, you don't show the people that's accused,
the
mugshots.
Yeah, so that changed in June of 2020, I believe, or June of 2020. And that was a decision from our editor, who felt that there was inequity in the mugshots we were running. And that could be for a variety of reasons. Some like in Jefferson County or Birmingham, mugshots are readily available. But say in a smaller town, it's really hard to get a mugshot. They're not online or they're not responsive. And so one of the reasons was she felt it was unfair that just because we had access to one person's mugshot, that we would run it when somebody else accused of the same crime wasn't getting their mugshot shown. And so, and often, people are found innocent.
Mhm.
So she or they, I'm not really sure, how it was ultimately decided, but decided that we would only run mugshots of, basically, there's a lot of caveats, but one is capital murder. And the reason that was chosen was because of the nature of their crime, they stand a chance of being killed by the state. And
Okay.
so she felt that anybody that had the potential to be killed by the state, that should be public record. We also will run photos of people wanted for violent crimes. And I think that's obvious, as to why. And then we'll run somebody in a position of public trust. So like a police officer or a school teacher or a politician, and there are all sorts of kind of criteria to that. It could be a daycare worker who is, a daycare worker charged with shoplifting is not going to have their mugshot. But a daycare worker accused of abusing a child in his or her care will. So a lot of it is based on the circumstances of the alleged crime. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. And one thing I've noticed, and I like to commend you on do this, like you publish a lot of stories about the victims, and their lives.
Right. And that's always, Jarvis, been sort of a priority of mine. I do believe that in, 99.9% of the cases of someone who is killed, whether they were doing something or not that directly contributed to their death, they still have people that love them and that will miss them. And I just think it's important to show people, what was lost in this act of violence. And it's been my experience that it's a healing thing for the families, that would not have a voice otherwise. Even if this person didn't mean a whole lot to somebody else, it meant a lot to the people that loved them, and they deserve to have that made known. And that's just something I've done my entire career when able. With every person killed, I try. That doesn't, families always want to do it. So a lot of times it doesn't get done, or sometimes families are hard to find, but if it can be done, I try to do it.
Well, what are some of the things, like I'm glad you kind of segue into it, like how's this, like, of course, you're covering these stories 24/7. How do you find a way to, I guess the way I'm trying to rephrase the question is, how is it taking like a professional and personal toll on yourself? How do you find a way to kind of like unwind, or because you're dealing with things that are real, violent, and we all are human.
I always tell people, I don't know. It's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? And I don't know if I'm good at what I do because I can handle it, or if I've just learned to handle it because it's what I do. But, I always say, much like doctors or nurses or paramedics, you have to be able to have any kind of staying power in this job. You've got to be able to turn it off. And when I say turn it off, I don't mean it ever really goes away. There are obviously some cases more than others, that I think about when I go to bed. But I'm probably a little harder, than I would have been had I become a school teacher or a librarian or something that didn't deal with, murder and mayhem every day. But I think I've been able to, I'm still a very compassionate person, and, And I like to think that that helps in what I do, which just like we talked about with me doing the victim stories. But when it's kids like Cupcake or Roy Tay Giles or Major Turner or TJ Moore, we've had so many kids killed in the last few years. Those stay with you. It's hard to put those behind you. And I still, I think about them a lot. And so it's just different. I can't really explain it other than that I've been doing it for 3.5 decades, and you just learn to adjust. I work really hard, but when I don't work, which is rare, I spend time with my family and my friends, and I'm able to mostly shut it out during that time period. But all of my friends and my family know, that that something may come up while we're in the middle of doing something.
Okay, and while I got you with me, what are some of the things you ever, never had the opportunity to address because you're always reporting the stories that may be a criticism, like in your field, that people may say, well, I can't believe that she writes this, or she just, I don't know the term of it. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I get a lot of pushback for several different reasons. I think, you always have, I'll have police saying, I'm anti-police, but at the same time, I'll have public saying I'm pro-police.
Okay.
And I think that means that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and reporters are supposed to be objective. You're really not supposed to be able to tell, well, I'm not supposed to be on a side, but if I am on a side, you're not supposed to be able to tell which side I'm on in terms of a story that I'm covering. So, you always get those complaints. I'll get complaints that, I cover too much Black on Black crime.
Okay.
But I work in a predominantly Black city.
Mm-hmm.
I work in an urban area. That's what's going to be taking place. Or, a lot, they'll say, well, you don't cover murders in Mountain Brook. Well, there's very few murders in Mountain Brook. And if there is a murder in Mountain Brook, it's going to be big news and we're going to cover it. But people don't want to believe that. Does that make sense? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get exactly where you're coming from. And I also I want to go back to, like you said at first, like you have to piece the story together. And, I want to commend you for the job you did on the Cupcake when that happened, how you was keeping the public informed.
Right.
I think if I was working in your field, it's almost like I had to almost be careful because a lot of times, like you said, police may be on the verge of solving it, but you're almost quicker to getting to the bottom of it, than they are sometimes.
Well, I would say that, sometimes I get information and I'll pass it on to police if it seems critical. Or if I get information that I think could hurt a case, I will certainly ask detectives before I put it out there, because the last thing I want to do is hurt a case. That's not my job. So many reporters today are me, trying to be personalities, and they're trying to make the story about them and, be the heroes. Oh, well, I got this information and, it could have solved the case. That's just not how I work. My job is to tell the story, not be the story. And I feel very, very strongly about that.
Have you ever felt like your life may be in danger covering any of these stories in your history?
Really, I've been in dangerous situations a couple times, but for the most part, I'm where the police are. That's not to say that I haven't gone out into places by myself and knocked on doors, but I have a really strong faith that God is not going. I don't know. I just trust God. I always have. Anybody that knows me pretty well knows that, I tend to pick people up on the side of the road.
Okay.
Like if it's raining and they're walking or any kind of thing, drives my family nuts. But again, that goes to the same thing, is I just feel like, I have a pretty good gift of discernment, and that God's not going to put me in a situation that God is not going to take care of me in. So no, have I heard gunfire while I'm out covering a story? Absolutely. Has it been close? Very. But I just very rarely have I been afraid.
Yeah, because I think even, the biggest thing we deal with now, especially in an urban city, is people always have this so-called no snitching type of thing.
Right.
Well, like you said, they'll go tell you quicker than they tell law enforcement.
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes.
And everything. So I guess roundabout, any in this interview, always with easy questions. Any final thoughts you want to tell people about covering your job?
No, I mean, I just, not just me, but all reporters. I mean, at least locally, I can't speak for national reporters, but people just need to understand that we have a job to do. And some of us that have been doing it a long time know how to do it. People are always wanting to tell us how to do our job better. But we know what we're doing, and that's about all I can say on that.
Okay, well, if somebody wanted to get in contact with you, about if they have story or tips, where can they reach you?
Yeah, so my Facebook Messenger, I always check the other folder. A lot of people get in touch with me that way, and through email is my email is always on too, and that's crobinson@al.com.
Okay, and the final question I want to ask you, this is very easy. What are some of your favorite hobbies or something people wouldn't know about you?
Well, I have a 7-month-old grandson, which if anybody follows me on Facebook, they know that, because I'm always posting pictures of him. So love spending time with him. I'm a huge shopaholic.
Okay.
I mean, I can shop any day, anywhere, anyhow. Love to find a good bargain. I have 2 dogs. I walk my dogs a lot. I just love being I have a great group of close friends, and just love being with family, love being with my friends, love being outside. And, but if I had to name one thing that anybody knows I'll do anytime, anywhere, that's shop.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for coming on today. Even bravery through that, because you all know this is allergy season. So everybody, we got cold and cough.
Yeah, I know I just hacked through the whole thing.
Oh, no, you're fine. I just want to thank you for the opportunity, because I've been reading so many of your articles for years, and you've been kind of an inspiration to me, even with what I do with the podcast and stuff. Because I definitely feel like you're one of the people in this city that's always making things happen. And I have to bring you back on in the future to because I feel like your job is always ever changing.
Always. It's something new, if not every day, every hour. So.
And everything. So thank you, Carol, for coming on today.
For having me.
Yes,
Anytime.
Yes. Please check out What's Happening Birmingham for more interviews. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm now on Apple Podcasts, everybody, so check me out there. And of course, everything's on what'shappenedbirmingham.com. Thank y'all again. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching the What's Happening Birmingham video podcast. Please check out our website, app, or subscribe to our YouTube channel for the latest videos today.